So I want to deal with the issue of this racism and these myths or whatever. Celts, the Irish people, who were probably the only people that were, well, not the only people, there were other people outside the empire who took to Christianity very easily because it was done in the good, original, Orthodox way of, you don't destroy the Druid holy sites or the Celtic holy sites, you relate to it, and you don't tear down their culture, just like how when the Orthodox brought Christianity to the Alutiiq Indians, they didn't destroy their culture. They said, no, okay, this is new symbolism, it's basically Christianized or baptized into this, but you still have this cultural link. Like, there's the chair of St. Patrick and stuff like that. But the Irish had the works of Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey and Christian texts, and were worshipping Christians who were preserved. A lot of the word outside of, very much literature outside of Europe when it was in the Dark Ages, and in fact the pigments were brought from all the way from Afghanistan. It was the Book of Kells is a technological marvel, and when they went over to the Pictland, what's called Scotland, which Scotland was for the Gaelic. They actually had, the Pict wasn't really Gaelic. They weren't really Celtic. They Celticized them. Just like kind of how the Central Americans are Latinized. They're not full-blood Latinos. And that's where the Scotland came from, because the Scots were originally Irish people. And it basically displaced the Pictish way of doing things, and it was its own church, and it wasn't taking orders from Rome. But when you had this great Celtic Irish civilization, what did you have in Britain? Well, you didn't have any Britons. The Britons were in Wales and chased off into parts of Ireland. The Britons were gone, destroyed by the Anglo, the Saxon, the Jute that came from Sweden and Denmark and northern Germany. So when the Irish were doing these technological marvels for the age that they were living in, the Anglo-Saxon was worshipping Woden and Thor, living in mud huts and eating dog. So, the superior race, the Irish were the ones that gave civilization to the Anglo-Saxon as a gift, out of Christian love, Christian charity. And again, I don't care about your theology or whatever. I'm big into history. But that's just how civilization went, It was the Christians and the Muslims that preserved the ancient pre-Christian Greek and Latin sources from ancient Rome and ancient Greece, and Archimedes and Aristotle and Socrates. So this idea of the Celts being some lower race, well, just 200 years later from when the Anglo-Saxons committed a genocide in what would become Anglo land, southern Britain, you had 200 years later, you had a group called the Vikings, which were the identical people, worshipping Woden, fierce, bloodthirsty, kill anybody, didn't have a You know, I mean, are we going to exalt the Vikings? The Anglo-Saxon was just a proto-Viking. You know, it had no, just to destroy civilization. It burned books, destroy the cross, desecrate the cross, which was the light of the world at that time. I mean, let's be honest. I've obviously been accused of being an atheist. I haven't said what I am, you know, and I'm not going to deny anything of being an agnostic or whatever. It depends on what time of the day it is, you know, kind of thing. But again, I'm not going to break rank in a video. But if there is you want to talk about a lower race, I mean, the last people to be civilized was the Anglo-Saxon. I mean, the Lombards were civilized before the Anglo-Saxon were. And yet there's this superiority complex. The Anglo-Saxon acts like they're the natives of Britain, or they're British at all, or they had anything to do with the Roman Empire. When the Romans were in Britain, the Anglo-Saxon were in Denmark, living in mud huts and eating dog and worshipping Odin and Thor. So this racial superiority crap, just pick up a history book and it goes right out the window.